Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're exhausted. Exhausted from trying, from grinding, from waking up early and sleeping late, from saying yes to every shift, every project, every opportunity that promises more, and still checking their bank account with that quiet sting in their chest. At 34, Arman had mastered the art of being busy. His calendar was full. His phone never stopped buzzing. He worked freelance design during the day, managed a small online store at night, and drove for rideshare on weekends. His friends called him relentless. His parents called him hardworking. Social media would have called him disciplined, yet every month ended the same way. Bills paid, savings untouched because there weren't any. A brief moment of relief, then the cycle restarted. He wasn't lazy, he was drowning in motion. And motion feels like progress. That's the trap. Arman didn't notice when work became an addiction to validation. Each completed task gave him a hit. Each payment notification felt like proof he mattered. If he slowed down, even for a day, anxiety crept in. What if I fall behind? What if someone else outworks me? What if stopping means I'm weak? So he never stopped. He optimized productivity apps. He watched videos on morning routines. He experimented with cold showers, strict schedules, caffeine timing. He became a machine built for output, but machines break. One Thursday evening, after 17 straight days without a full rest day, Arman sat in his car overlooking the water near the old marina. He had just finished a delivery shift. The sky was turning orange. Boats rocked gently against the dock. He noticed an older fisherman sitting alone at the edge of the pier. The man wasn't rushing. He wasn't surrounded by equipment. One simple rod, one cooler, one thermos. Arman watched him for almost 20 minutes. The fisherman cast his line, waited, reeled in, reset, calm, precise, unhurried. Meanwhile, Arman's phone buzzed 3 times in his pocket. Another ride request, 2 client emails marked urgent. He ignored them for a moment. Something about the fisherman bothered him, not because he looked poor, because he looked free. Arman stepped out of the car and walked toward the pier, more to stretch than to talk. But when he reached the dock, the fisherman glanced up and nodded. "Long day?" the old man asked. Arman laughed softly. "Long week." The fisherman smiled. "You look like someone chasing the ocean with a bucket." That sentence hit harder than it should have. "What does that even mean?" Arman asked. The fisherman lifted his rod slightly. "You can scoop water all day. You'll still be standing in the same ocean." Arman crossed his arms. "So what's the alternative? Stop working?" The fisherman chuckled. "No, fish." Silence hung between them. Arman felt irritation rising. He had no patience for cryptic wisdom. "I work nonstop," he said defensively. "Multiple income streams. I'm building something." The fisherman studied him carefully. "Is it building you?" That question didn't feel philosophical. It felt surgical. Arman didn't answer. The fisherman continued, "Most people confuse activity with leverage, effort with value. They think more hours equal more income, but the ocean doesn't reward movement. It rewards position." Position. Arman glanced at the calm water. The fisherman pointed toward a cluster of darker ripples farther out. "See that patch? That's where the fish move this time of day. I don't cast randomly. I study patterns. I wait for tides. I place the line where probability is highest." He tapped the cooler beside him. "I don't work nonstop. I work aligned." Arman felt something uncomfortable forming in his chest. Aligned? When was the last time he asked whether his work was aligned? He thought about his week. The endless microtasks, the constant context switching, the reactive decisions. He wasn't choosing opportunities based on long-term leverage. He was choosing based on immediate cash, and immediate cash kept him surviving, not advancing. The fisherman reeled in slowly. "No fish." He reset again, patient. "You're tired," the old man said gently. "Not because you work hard, because you're scattered." Arman exhaled. Scattered was accurate. Every time a new opportunity appeared, he grabbed it. Every time someone offered quick money, he said yes. He feared saying no more than he feared exhaustion, because saying no meant risking less, and less felt dangerous. But non-stop effort hadn't made him secure. It had made him dependent on constant motion. The fisherman suddenly pulled his rod upward. A sharp bend, a controlled struggle. Within seconds, he lifted a solid silver fish into the air. One cast. One catch. He unhooked it calmly and placed it in the cooler. Then he looked at Arman. "You can exhaust yourself scooping water," he said quietly, "or you can learn where the fish are." The sun dipped lower. The marina lights flickered on. Arman's phone buzzed again. He didn't reach for it. For the first time in months, he felt the weight of a different question pressing against his identity. What if the problem isn't how hard I'm working? What if it's where I'm placing my effort? And that thought was more terrifying than any unpaid bill, because if effort wasn't the answer, then his entire self-image as the hardest worker in the room meant nothing. And without that identity, who was he? Arman didn't sleep that night, not because of deadlines, because of doubt. The fisherman's words kept replaying in his mind like a quiet accusation. You're scattered. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling something he hadn't felt in years, suspicion, not toward the world, toward his strategy. By morning, his instinct was to drown that discomfort in motion. He reached for his phone, 22 notifications. 3 clients asking for revisions, a supplier issue, 2 rideshare bonuses expiring soon. Old Arman would have jumped. Instead, he hesitated. What if Nonstop movement was the very thing keeping him trapped? That thought threatened his identity. He had always believed one thing: if I work harder than everyone else, I'll win. It sounded noble. It was incomplete. By noon, he canceled 2 low-paying gigs. The moment he sent those emails, anxiety surged through his chest like cold water. What are you doing? That's money. He almost reversed it. Almost. But something inside him whispered that the fisherman wasn't talking about laziness. He was talking about leverage. So Arman did something he hadn't done in years. He audited his own effort, not emotionally, mathematically. He wrote down every income source, every hour spent, every dollar earned, every mental cost attached. The numbers didn't lie. Rideshare consumed his weekends and drained his energy, but contributed the smallest margin. His online store generated moderate income but required constant troubleshooting. Freelance design, however, paid the highest hourly rate and had potential for long-term contracts if he invested in higher-tier clients instead of quick jobs. He stared at the page. He wasn't poor because he lacked work ethic. He was poor because he lacked concentration. He was fishing in 20 shallow ponds instead of mastering one deep lake. But knowing this didn't make change easy. The next week tested him. A corporate client rejected one of his bigger proposals. His online store sales dipped unexpectedly. Panic flared again. See? If you drop income streams, you'll collapse. His ego screamed for safety. He felt the pull to reactivate every gig, to return to frantic multitasking, to rebuild the illusion of security through activity. But then he remembered the darker patch of water the fisherman had pointed to. Probability over panic. He made a decision that terrified him. He paused rideshare completely for 30 days. Not forever, 30 days. Instead of chasing immediate cash, he redirected those hours toward upgrading his design portfolio. He studied higher-paying niches, brand strategy, packaging design, long-term retainers. He analyzed competitors who charged 3 times his rate. He noticed something uncomfortable. They weren't necessarily more talented. They were positioned differently. Their messaging was specific. Their clients were targeted. Their work solved expensive problems. Arman realized he had been marketing himself as available, not valuable. There's a difference. Being available attracts requests. Being valuable attracts contracts. For the first time, he wasn't increasing hours. He was increasing precision. He built a new rule for himself. Before accepting any work, he asked 3 questions. Does this increase my skill? Does this increase my rate? Does this increase my reputation? If the answer was no to all 3, he declined. The first week felt brutal. Money slowed, doubt grew louder. He questioned whether he had misunderstood everything. Maybe the fisherman had the luxury of patience. Maybe Arman didn't. Then came the setback. A client he depended on for consistent freelance work decided to move in-house. Just like that, 20% of his monthly income vanished. Old Arman would have compensated instantly by grabbing 5 smaller gigs. His fingers hovered over job boards, but then something strange happened. Instead of panic, he felt clarity. If I go back now, I'll prove I never changed. So he did the opposite. He doubled down on targeting higher-tier clients. He sent fewer proposals, but each one was custom, strategic, research-driven. He rewrote his portfolio positioning from freelance designer to brand systems designer for e-commerce growth. It felt bold, almost arrogant, and fear whispered, "Who do you think you are?" That was the real battle. Not money, identity. Because positioning yourself differently forces you to see yourself differently. Weeks passed. Savings tightened. His confidence wavered. But something else shifted. He had more mental space, more depth. More focus. He wasn't juggling chaos anymore. He was studying one current. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, an email arrived from a mid-sized wellness company. They had seen his revised portfolio. They needed a full brand overhaul. Packaging, digital assets, launch strategy. The budget was 3 times his previous average project. His heart pounded. He read the message twice to confirm it was real. This wasn't luck. It was alignment. He negotiated calmly. He didn't discount himself out of fear, and when the contract was signed, something inside him rewired. He realized the fisherman never meant work less, he meant work where it matters, but the lesson wasn't finished, because one contract doesn't fix a mindset. The real shift was still forming. Arman looked at his calendar that night. For the first time in years, it wasn't overloaded, it was intentional. And in that empty space, he felt something unfamiliar: control. Not over outcomes, over direction. But direction demands discipline, and discipline isn't about doing more, it's about refusing distraction. The ocean was still vast, but now he knew where to cast. The second contract didn't come as fast. That's where most people quit. Momentum is seductive. One win makes you feel invincible. 2 weeks of silence makes you question everything again. Arman felt it creeping back in. The old hunger for quick validation, the itch to just take something so the numbers would look steady. But something had changed at a deeper level. He wasn't just chasing higher income anymore, he was protecting position. That was the real lesson. Position over panic. He realized the fisherman never measured success by how many times he cast the line. He measured it by whether he was casting in the right water. So Arman refined his system, not motivation, system. First, he defined his deep water. Not broadly, specifically. E-commerce brands between 1 and 5 million in revenue that needed brand cohesion before scaling ads. That was the ripple pattern. That was where money moved with urgency. Second, he built depth instead of breadth. Instead of learning random new design trends, he studied conversion psychology, premium packaging materials, consumer trust signals, skills that compounded, skills that increased the value of every future project. Third, he protected energy like capital. No more late-night gig work, no more scattered task switching. Deep work blocks, strategic outreach windows, recovery time. It wasn't glamorous. It was disciplined constraint, and constraint is uncomfortable when you've built your identity around being the hardest worker. There were weeks where income dipped below what he used to make juggling everything. Those were the real tests, because growth doesn't feel like progress at first. It feels like exposure. One evening, an old rideshare bonus notification popped up. Earn extra this weekend. He stared at it longer than he wanted to admit. It would be easy, familiar, safe. But safe was the trap. He closed the app. That small act felt bigger than any contract. Because he wasn't just declining money, he was declining the old version of himself, the version who equated busyness with worth. 3 months into the shift, something remarkable happened. His projects started overlapping, not in chaos, but in continuity. One satisfied client referred another. A packaging redesign led to a long-term retainer for product launches. His rates quietly increased again, not because he demanded more, because he delivered depth. The difference between nonstop work and aligned work became obvious. Nonstop work drains you because it's reactive. Aligned work energizes you because it's intentional. There was still stress, still deadlines, still negotiation, but there was no scrambling. He wasn't scooping the ocean anymore, he was fishing currents. And here's the part no one talks about. Working nonstop feels heroic. Strategic restraint feels boring. Until the results compound. 6 months after that evening at the marina, Arman checked his financial dashboard. For the first time in his adult life, he had savings that weren't earmarked for survival. He had breathing room. But more importantly, he had clarity. He understood something most people miss. Effort is infinite. Attention is not. You can work 20 hours a day and still be poor if your attention is fragmented. You can work 6 focused hours in the right direction and change your trajectory entirely. The fisherman's lesson was never about fishing. It was about probability, about leverage, about identity. Arman used to introduce himself as someone who hustles. Now, when people asked what he did, he said calmly, "I design growth systems for scaling brands." Notice the difference. One sounds busy, the other sounds positioned. Identity shapes decisions. Decisions shape outcomes. If you believe your survival depends on constant motion, you will chase every ripple and stay exhausted. If you believe your growth depends on strategic placement, you will tolerate temporary dips for long-term leverage. The ocean hasn't changed. The opportunities are still chaotic. The economy is still unpredictable. But the fisherman knew something most workers ignore. You don't control the tide. You control where you stand. And if you're working nonstop but still broke, maybe the answer isn't more hours. Maybe it's fewer, sharper ones. Maybe it's eliminating the shallow ponds. Maybe it's asking harder questions before saying yes. Does this deepen my skill? Does this increase my value? Does this strengthen my position? If not, it's just movement. And movement without direction is exhaustion disguised as ambition. There's a version of you addicted to being busy, and there's a version of you committed to being effective. They cannot coexist. One chases everything, the other chooses deliberately. The fisherman never rushed the ocean. He studied it, and the moment you stop proving how hard you work and start proving how precisely you place your effort, that's when income stops being a struggle. That's when exhaustion turns into expansion. That's when you stop surviving the month and start shaping your trajectory. So the next time your phone buzzes with another opportunity, pause. Don't ask, how much does it pay? Ask, where does this place me? Because the goal isn't to work nonstop. The goal is to work aligned. And once you understand that, you'll never chase the ocean with a bucket again.